Welcome back to Visordown. My name is Alex, and today we're looking at day 2 of our affectionately titled Visordown lead jog journey. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, go give it a watch to get the rundown on what we're up to, and watch the chat we had with the fantastic Victoria Pendleton. But let's get going with episode 2. After a momentous start to our Land's End to John O'Groat's adventure on the Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro and Rally Pro, we've so far covered the first portion of our 3-day tour. First getting to Bournemouth, where we spoke with legendary British cyclist and Triumph fan Victoria Pendleton, and we then continued another 30 miles north to our first stop in Semley at the Bennett Arms on the Dorset and Wiltshire border. That brings us to the here and now. Total miles covered so far, around 230. Miles to go, around 800. So we were still facing a large chunk of our journey ahead, with a stop at Baffle Haus next on the cards. We begin day 2 at the Bennett Arms in Semley, filling our bellies with a full English breakfast and kicking things off with an early rise. Eyes set on the illustrious doors of the Baffle Haus in Wales and some top roads to enjoy on the Tigers along the way. So we set off from Semley, heading north-ish towards Bath on the A46, before picking up the M4 to take us past Bristol and over the River Severn into Wales. Given the distance from Semley to Pontypool is a relatively easy 82 miles that can be covered in a couple of hours, we were afforded the chance to get out on some less trodden paths to enjoy the versatility of these Tigers on the way. One of the only times on this trip that we'd opt for trickier riding as opposed to the direct route. After all, you don't do well over 1,000 miles in a few days by dawdling your way along. Now, as some of you said in the first episode, doing a tour like this on bikes like this is hardly an exceptionally difficult trip. The bikes do make it far too easy for us, and we'd certainly have to agree with you. The Tigers really did make this easy, and there is no hiding that at all. Now, as we take the long way to the bike mecca that is Baffle Haus in Pontypool, we have the chance to get to know the Tiger family in new environments. This generation of Tigers feature the 888cc T-Plane Triple with 94 brake horsepower peak power and around 87 Newton meters of torque, which is matched with the thumping low-end feel of a V-twin and the characteristics of a Triumph Triple taking over above 4K. It's almost like 2 engines in one. Now, twisty B-roads and dusty byways galore, we could finally stretch the legs of the Tiger 900s on some slightly different roads, with the Rally Pro really able to shine when the terrain got a touch more challenging thanks to Showa long travel forks over the Marzocchis. Wire-spoked wheels that look top, by the way, and the also important off-road Pro mode to disengage the rear ABS, adjust the throttle response and the traction control levels really did make the Rally Pro start to shine a little bit brighter on these roads. Now, the GT Pro was no slouch on tricky terrain, mind, but it's far more likely to opt for a long distance haul by road than sprints in the mud. The guarantee across both of these bikes is comfort in the saddle, and it's a happy place to be for the most iron of iron butts. Being able to adjust the suspension on the fly was really handy too, with the GT Pro's semi-active electronic suspension letting you adjust preload through the massive and impressive TFT screen that's more like an iPad. Whilst the Rally Pro is a bit more analog in its approach for dialing in your settings manually and direct. Now, as we took the M4 bridge across into Wales, we did split up, and I took the M4 bridge whilst Toad took the more unconventional, smaller bridge on the M48. But anyway, we're riding closer around into the south of Wales, and you could almost smell the proximity of Baffle Haus as you draw closer, and that's not in a nasty way. The scent of the two-stroke smoke and slight fragrance of petrol and freshly laid rubber with a touch of coffee fills the air for those who know what they like. So, as it happens, we do bump into George North at Baffle Haus to share the ride and have a chance to chat with him about the Triumph Tiger range, his custom-built Triumph Bonneville that's on display, and we were able to get out on the road with him, and he did know some fantastic roads and places to go. Now, I previously called Baffle Haus a mecca, and it really is a biker's paradise. Not only have they got some stunning custom bikes on display, they've got some oddities and things that you don't really see anywhere else. And of course, because of its proximity to some absolutely fantastic roads, you'll also get a lot of riders out there who know Wales and they know the roads, so you can get a few tips and tricks for places to go around there. Of course, the Baffle Haus team and the Baffle Culture guys are really friendly, and you can find out where best to go from them directly as well. And yeah, the coffee is genuinely incredible. So definitely grab a cup of coffee if you can. But without further ado, here's our first part of the interview with George North.
George North, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to have a sit down and a chat with us.
No, my pleasure.
We are in this place in Wales called Baffle Haus. I've been to once before. We were on a bike meet out here, and we came and said hello to you very quickly. But for those that don't know, what is Baffle Haus and how did it all sort of come about?
Well, good to see you again and welcome back. What is Baffle Haus? Essentially, I guess it's just like what we would call the ultimate hangout, really, for us. You know, we are just a group of friends that love motorcycles. Sort of kind of had a conversation about, you know, nothing really in South Wales is like, you know, obviously there's lots of bike cafes and stuff, but nothing is, you know, like this. So we wanted to create somewhere that, you know, everyone's welcome, whether it be, you know, from your 125s up to your adventure, to your sports bike and everything in between, you know, your choppers or whatever. But also keep it quite open and friendly and quite cool looking with, you know, good coffee and food and stuff. So, and then this is us, really.
So it's like, sort of to sum it up, it's basically the ultimate man cave that you've opened up to the public.
Essentially, yeah. Our theory was if it didn't work, at least we've got a cool place to hang out.
Yeah, planning ahead, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, while we're on the subject, that literally, this place is dripping in bikes and also rally cars and classic minis and everything else. You're obviously heavily into petrol engines. You're a bit of a petrol head. How did you get that passion? Where did that come from for you?
Yeah, I guess here's a good example. You've got everything between a little monkey bike there to a full custom, right through to obviously the adventure bikes and stuff outside, right through to rally cars and minis.
And a giant Cadillac.
A giant massive Cadillac, yeah. And I think this is kind of like a combination of all of us, but one of our guys is his sort of place. But for me, I guess I've always been into engines and cars and motorbikes and stuff I shouldn't really be involved in, especially playing sport. But I think it comes from my dad, and essentially he's an engineer, you know, and he loves his cars. You know, when he was in the RAF, and he spoke about for years about how he didn't save his money, he just bought cars, and he tells these great stories. And I think I just got hooked on these stories. Yeah. And then when we were a kid, we had a little field bike with my friends of farmers, and quad bikes, and then back to bikes, and you know, and everything was always, you know,
snowballs.
Yeah, it snowballs. Then we converted a ride-on lawnmower to make it a little bit faster, and that sort of thing. And we always, to be fair, I as a child I was very lucky. I was always outside, either on my bike, pedal bike, or something with an engine. So I was always very lucky in that sense.
Fair play. I mean, you just touched on it. You've got your bike up there, which is on the rack. I got some video footage of it earlier on. Did you actually, is that your own bike that, you know, was designed the way that you wanted it, and you had a hand in creating that bike?
Yeah, I think from that early age, my dad, where being a bit tight like a Yorkshireman and being an engineer, nothing's ever broken. So I've always had this bug for tinkering and having a go myself. And as we were discussing earlier, I think you may as well have a go yourself, because if you don't succeed. Well, if you do succeed, it's a great success. You know, you've learned a new skill. You've saved, a bit of time, a bit of money, but also, you've upskilled yourself, and it's a massive sense of achievement. Yeah. But then, obviously, if it doesn't go well, you ask your mates, and that's quite lucky about this. You've got a lot of people that know a lot of things. Yeah. But you'd also just end up giving it to your mate to fix anyway. So you may as well give it a go and try and learn something new. But no, I bought that bike 2 years ago. This is not because it's with Triumph. I actually bought a Triumph as well, with the help of Triumph. And that is a combination of bits that friends know, help me sort of modify, a few bits that are just bolt-on bits, and a few bits that are quite modified, which are down to people that are far better qualified than me and awesome. I'm really happy with it. But unfortunately, because obviously COVID, and then I just recently had knee surgery, it's been on the rack for a fair while, but hopefully it's coming down next few weeks now. Yeah,
I mean, if you want somebody to exercise it for you, I'm in about 60 miles away. I'll happily come over.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you were building that bike, just going back to it, did you have a picture in your head of the bike that you wanted it to turn into? Was that always in your mind?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm a sucker for air-cooled engines.
Yeah.
So that was something we discussed earlier. And I guess for me, it was a combination of a few things I'd seen, online, Instagram, and what I'd seen in my head, what I thought was really cool. I just thought to start with, I guess the base bike is such a wicked engine and like a lovely thing to play with. Then I just wanted to tidy everything up, so have no wires, make it real simple with just switches. And then, the rest, I guess, is, Sid from Sid Motorbikes did a lot of work for me. There's Jody at Thornton 100 did the exhaust, so I quite liked that, sort of to keep it scrambler, but high level, but one on either side.
Yeah.
And that was a real pain for him, because trying to get them all to match up was a pain, but he's done an amazing job there.
I bet it's loud as well, because there doesn't seem to be very much baffle in the bike in Baffle House.
Yeah, there is a baffle in there. You just have to look for it. And then you've just got, as I said, a bit of bolt-on bits. You've got some O-rings, shocks and suspension there. Then you've got motone bits that again are on, and then motor gadget bits. And then just trying to keep it, as I said, real clean. Had some cool parts from back. I don't know if you've seen them, the French company. I had a seat and the tail tidy from them. And basically I just thought I may as well give it a go. It's the first time I ever physically chopped a bike, my own bike, so that was interesting. I had the grinder out.
I don't think I'd have the bollocks to do that.
Yeah, what did they say? Measure twice, cut once? I measured like 100 times and cut once.
So it was like 3 days of measuring.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the instructions were in French and then translated into English.
Oh,
so I had to then double check what it was and making sure. But now, again, I just wanted it clean and just clean and no fuss and just simple really. And that's, I hope. And the paint was done by a good friend of mine, Alistair. And I wanted to kind of incorporate like the baffle kind of vibe in there. So that's kind of how it worked really.
Very true.
So stay tuned for episode 3 for more riding footage with George and the rest of the interview, as well as us heading out of Wales north towards John O'Groats. And you certainly won't want to miss it, because the roads just get even more spectacular as we go.